Thank you. Morning, everyone. Glad you're all joining us. Bright and early, 9 a.m. It's a pretty spring day here in Southeast Ohio. Hopefully where you are it is as well. We're gonna let folks in and get started in a minute or two. And Jacob is our technical support person. He just dropped in the chat there. We do hope that folks just want to introduce themselves in the chat. We will have time, of course, to interact during the day, but just to give everyone a quick hello from the chat, that would be very helpful. Okay, I'm going to kick us off here. Good morning again. My name is Sarah Conley-Ballew. I'm Rural Action Sustainable Energy Solutions Director, and I'm incredibly excited that we're here together today. We're joining today because Rural Action and our partners, Buckeye Hills Regional Council, felt as though the time was right to again look closely at how the principles of WealthWorks, which is a well-known and established platform for economic development, can be utilized in our communities as we do some of this deep and embedded community-based development work. And Rural Action was invited by Buckeye Hills to sort of bring these institutes. This is the second of 3 WealthWorks institutes that will be taking place. We had one in November, which Dan, who will be presenting shortly, will share a little bit about. And that focus was around recreation and tourism and how the WealthWorks principles really apply in that regard. Today's focus is going to be around how clean energy and clean energy development can really work with the principles and framework of WealthWorks. So just to kick us off here, we are going to have 2 virtual days together. In the morning, we recognize and respect that everyone is quite busy and time is precious. So we're using this opportunity to really give everyone what I like to say an appetizer menu of clean energy related projects, tools, and resources. Today's focus is really around the big picture, the WealthWorks framework, and then really what the energy economy looks like today, both here in sort of our rural places, but also on a broader landscape. And then we're going to be breaking out into groups and really diving deeper into what does it mean to build a strong solar and clean transportation and energy efficient economy. So that's kind of how today's going to go. This is, in my opinion, an opportunity for you most directly to, really skill up. If there's anything today that sparks for you that you really wanted to understand better, I hope that this is the chance for you to really get that information, ask questions, really engage with our presenters, use the chat to engage with fellow attendees, and really just make this count for you. I think when I look at the tools we each need, that's different for everyone. Your work is unique to you, and I hope that this is an opportunity to really build a successful platform for you to continue to do clean energy development work in whatever regard it works for you. I'm going to pass things over to Dan. He's going to give you a little bit of background on rural action. So take it away, Dan.
Okay. Thanks, Sarah. And good morning, everyone, on this Wednesday, second WealthWorks in rural Appalachia, Ohio Institute that Rural Action is doing. And I wanted to give a couple of quick thank yous to the people involved. First of all, Buckeye Hills Regional Council for providing some funds that we could do the 3 institutes. This is number 2. I want to thank Leslie and AceNet for your unending support of all things good in Appalachia, Ohio, and especially working with us for so many different projects. Thanks for joining us this morning. Melissa Levy, also involved with the WealthWorks Institute, is based in the New England region, but she's taken some time today to join us too. So thanks for bringing your expertise. I was able to meet all the presenters through a couple of pre-information sessions yet last week and on Monday. And thanks all of you for what you do across such a wide spectrum. And thanks for giving your time and your enthusiasm to this. And finally, everyone who registered to come, whether you're an economic development practitioner, community member, entrepreneur, community leader, thanks for your time and your interest and your desire to become better at this. Because the clean energy future is one it's here. And as I say so often in our community work, the future is coming whether you prepare for it or not. So preparing and being aware of what the opportunities are is just going to position all our communities a lot better. I did want to mention a little bit about Rural Action for those of you who are not as familiar with us. Rural Action was founded in 1991 in Athens County, Ohio. And our mission has continued to be one where we try to build a more just economy throughout this region by using the assets that we have in ways that are environmentally, socially, and economically sustainable for all of our communities. And as a member-supported organization, I like to say, if you like what we do, become a member, because that's part of how we do what we do. But more importantly, as a member, you have the opportunity to have input on the programs and the direction that we go. So that's a little bit about how we started. We have direct program activity in 27 of the counties in Appalachia right now, and we have more county influence beyond that at different levels. We also have work in the state of West Virginia. So there's a lot of area that we've been able to connect to over the years, beginning in 1991. The grounding of Rural Action's work is really this theory change model that we have up in front of you. And it all starts with this idea of engaging communities where they are, begin with what communities have and what their needs and opportunities are. And through that process, we try to learn together with them through community conversations, community meetings, community projects, and help them learn about themselves as well and what they have, which can lead to the community's ability to have control and take charge of the assets that they do have. And you'll hear a lot more about the different kinds of assets in a little bit from Melissa and Leslie, because that's the core of the WealthWorks model, is understanding the different assets that all these communities have. Beyond that, with an understanding of what communities have and what they have ownership of, we can move to helping them build infrastructure. And that's not just water lines and roads and sidewalks. That's infrastructure for getting processes done. That's community leadership. that's project leadership, that's assistance with grants, and developing the infrastructure to get things done on their own, rather than with a constant support of an organization or waiting for that outside support to come for every project, because communities are capable of a lot on their own with the right training. And along with that, the ability to connect to the markets that are in our area for economic opportunities. And this theory of change is really grounded in all of the different program sectors you see on the right that Rural Action currently has in place. The watershed program was one of the first, it was actually the first program that Rural Action engaged in communities to address acid mine drainage from, the coal mining effects in the area. And we've since moved into all these other sectors because these are needs that come up, and these are opportunities that come up for the community. A couple more quick thoughts. As Sarah mentioned, last year we also held a WealthWorks Institute in the spring, and we looked at the recreation tourism opportunities in Appalachia, Ohio. And within that, we really looked at the different things that were going on and how to connect them up together into value change and complementary activities across the board. The next slide it's a little busy, and it could be busier. But what I did want to just put out there as we get closer to what Leslie and Melissa are going to talk about is that with the WealthWorks approach, every region, every community has a ton of assets, a ton of wealth. The few examples I put up here relate with recreation tourism, waterways, rivers, boating operations, startups, trail running events, bike running events, horseback riding, short-term rentals. There's this activity that's bubbling all around outdoor recreation and the tourism economy right now. They can be complementary if they understand how they can be complementary, and WealthWorks really tries to lay that out for you. Some of the things that Rural Action has been able to bring into this picture are trainings and opportunities for entrepreneurs to improve and connect with each other. We offer a training on how to use the Airbnb platform for a short-term rental startup. We are also able to assist businesses to get some entry-level financing through the Kiva crowdfunded loan program, which allows them to get up with some capital to start without going through conventional lenders. And the last one, way down in the bottom corner, the Trailtown Business Challenge we just wrapped up. But this was an opportunity for entrepreneurs to pull together their thoughts for a business plan for a new business or business expansion, create a plan and have the opportunity to present that plan and receive some startup funds to get their operation going. So the WealthWorks approach attempts to make sense of a lot of this, and it does make sense. It's a very intentional process, which is also grounded in that theory of change that Rural Action operates on, of beginning where the community is and helping them take ownership of what they have to want to be. So that's the quick overview of a little bit how Rural Action works, but the fundamental principle is begin where the community is and work with them and use the tools that we have. I'm going to turn over to Sarah, and then we'll soon get into Melissa and Leslie's session. So just let me know the next slide.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, so I hope that gave you a sense or a taste of how Rural Action applies the WealthWorks principle to the work that we do. As it relates to energy, since 2018, Rural Action's Sustainable Energy Solutions program has focused on building those bridges and making those connections and laying the groundwork for clean energy and renewable energy development in the region. This kind of began back in 2015 when Athens County endeavored to participate in the Georgetown University Energy Prize. That was really the catalyst for a lot of reduction in energy use across our county, a real community-based effort to build out our renewable energy resources, distributed generation on rooftops. We established an Athens Public Solar Fund using a carbon fee model with our partners, the Sustainable Ohio Public Energy Council, and really, built out a system that people can build upon, kind of in that model of starting at the foundation level. Today, Rural Actions focus is largely around, or the Sustainable Energy Solutions focus is largely around the clean transportation sector. This is a emerging area that many of you here today and perhaps your colleagues are really focusing in on. We know that electrification is growing more rapidly than anyone had anticipated. And we're about to see the electric vehicle market really take off in a big way. So how are we ready is such a pressing and important question. We'll be spending a good amount of time on clean transportation today, as well as renewable energy, building out both the residential and commercial solar market in this region. We're also going to talk a bit about utility scale solar, because that's also something coming to our area, and it's an important issue to tackle and understand. So, taking all of this on really in chorus is my approach as director and Rural Actions approach. We really can't look at electrifying our grid without where does that electricity come from? What communities are impacted? How are they going to prosper and benefit? How are we going to create rooted wealth and grow our local economy in this shift? We know our region has been an energy leader for generations. We're very proud of that. And we want to continue to maintain that legacy and really be a really vital part of both our country's energy future, but also very much our region's energy future. So I hope today you really get a sense of that. One more housekeeping thing. We're doing decent on time here. One more housekeeping thing. So day 2 of the WealthWorks Institute, we're providing an opportunity with several of the presenters that you'll hear from this today and tomorrow for you to have some one-on-one consulting time, because we know that in a group setting, it's hard to ask really direct questions and get to the meat of things. And oftentimes it's for me when I listen to a presenter and think, oh, I would love to ask them this question very directly related to this project I'm working on. But it's hard to do that in a group setting. And so on Thursday, from 1 to 3, we have consulting opportunities where you can sign up for a 15-minute or even 30-minute, if you want to take 2 slots session with 4 of our presenters. So you'll see here, actually go to the next slide if you would, Dan.
Sure.
Thank you. So our one-on-one technical assistance sessions, you can choose between visiting with Brandon Jones from Clean Fuels, Ohio, Justin Kale from Energility, Sarah Dougherty from Bright Energy Innovators, or from Tristan Rader, Solar United Neighbors. You're welcome to sit down with every one of them if you'd like. This is an open opportunity for anyone who needs, just some direct time with each of them. Jacob is going to drop in the chat. Yeah, already did, because he's on top of things. A Google Doc. So feel free to click into that anytime during our conversation today, tomorrow as well. We're going to keep this document available for you to go in, pick a time slot that works for you until tomorrow at 10 a.m. At that point, we'll close it down, and whatever slot you signed up for, you'll receive an email, whether it's, if you signed up, let's say, to meet with Brandon from 1:15 to 1:30, Brandon's going to reach out to you directly with a Zoom link and calendar invite, and then you two will just have your own conversation. So that's kind of how that will work. If you have questions or want to, learn more about it, feel free to put something in the chat or direct message me or Jacob, and we can make sure to set you up right. But yeah, I hope folks take advantage of that. This is a time to really, get your questions answered. I want to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, With that, I would like to introduce our first two presenters, co-presenters. You're going to be hearing today from Melissa Levy. Melissa is the principal at Community Roots, LLC, where she works closely with state and local governments, nonprofit organizations, foundations, and businesses around wealth creation value chains. Also around economic research and design and facilitation of workshops and trainings. You'll also be hearing from Leslie Schaller. She's the Director of Programs at AceNet, where she directs multiple training and technical assistance programs. This helps micro entrepreneurs through small business curriculum development, contract services, and the formation of support networks of research providers. Both of these women come with a wealth of experience. So I'm very thankful you're here today, and I will turn it over to you.
Okay, it took me a while to get unmuted. So thank you, Sarah. I'm so delighted to be here. This is the second in our series of these WealthWorks Institute workshops. I so wish we could do this in person. You know, that was the plan when we started coming up with this idea, and Buckeye Hills provided the funding for us to implement. I'm hoping that that will happen, maybe coming soon, and then Institute 3 near you. But in the meantime, I really appreciate your forbearance to join us again on Zoom. Melissa and I are going to try and make this as interactive as possible. So you're going to see some polls and you're going to see a video. Melissa is a wonderful colleague. We've worked together for years on this WealthWorks framework. I guess I could even say decades now. So this is an approach that still, I think, is new to a lot of folks. It has been around for a while. I think it has a proven track record. There are WealthWorks hubs all across the United States. So there's a large network of practitioners who work on advancing the WealthWorks framework. I would strongly encourage you, if you haven't had the opportunity, to go to wealthworks.org. The website has tremendous resources. There's great videos. In fact, those of you who live in Southeastern Ohio, you know, if you want to check out the videos, you'll probably even see representation of some of the projects of AceNet, Rural Action, and our partners in multiple sectors. But I think, you know, what we're here today, as Sarah so aptly put, is just the appetizer of getting to know this work. So really, WealthWorks as a goal advances a region's prosperity to build wealth that sticks. When you listen to Dan kind of go over an introduction for Rural Action, you can see how much of our work here in Appalachia, Ohio, is really informed by this framework. It's been strongly embraced for close to 20 years now by Rural Action, AceNet, and many of our partners. And just looking at our audience today, I know some of you are old hands and very familiar with this work. So I would really encourage people to ask questions through the chat. Introductions still in the chat would be very helpful, so that again, throughout the next 2 days, we can reach out to you and get more information. But you might want to check out certainly that website first. So WealthWorks really is the bridge. You know, it bridges the community development work, the work that so many of us are passionate about, giving voice, creating empowerment, creating those processes that Dan really suggested early on to organize communities in such a way that goes beyond maybe traditional economic development. A lot of times we talk about this as doing economic development differently. So we all know that attraction, retention, entrepreneurship is important, but I think what WealthWorks really appreciates is that we're investing for long-term gain. Local ownership, local control, definitely in the forefront. Many of you know that my other hat I wear is as an entrepreneur and the founder and business director of worker-owned business. So the local control, local ownership piece really resonates with me. And I think it's particularly important for those of us who are trying to reanimate economic development in Appalachia or Appalachia, Ohio. So we want to improve livelihoods for everyone. We want to make sure inclusion happens, that no one is marginalized, that everyone is included in the economy. And we do that really by focusing on multiple forms of wealth. And we're going to talk about those capitals here in a minute. But why wealth creation? Well, I think this approach, it really links together the whole system. And we're going to be talking about that over the next 2 days, really in the context of clean energy, energy efficiency as a sector. But it's linking a system of assets, of producers, of consumers in ways that benefit everyone and that really sticks rural wealth in our communities. It builds wealth, it sustains wealth for our people and places. So this system approach, it involves moving from the parts to the whole. And you'll see that in some of the value chain images we're going to provide. It also emphasizes investment for long-term gain. These are not one-off, quick projects. This is longitudinal work. Again, I just want to acknowledge the folks who are attending today. Many of you have been walking this road as we build it for many years, for many decades within Appalachia and Central Appalachia. So understanding the difference between wealth and income, I think, is really important. And boy, hasn't the last 2 years of the COVID pandemic really shined the spotlight on that. A lot of individuals, households, communities, oftentimes were, challenged by these shifts in the economic realities of our communities. So creating wealth that sticks, really focused on wealth, livelihoods, developing assets, that's going to create more resilience. But how do we do this? Well, we probably do it best by collaborating for mutual benefit, building value chains, looking at the different forms of capital. That always, I think, really amounts to us cooperating within communities, learning how to collaborate. And oftentimes it's WealthWorks practitioners, it's community members, it's nonprofit organizations that are helping really set the stage for that level of collaboration. So I'm going to show some slides here that also recognize some of the work being done here in Appalachia, Ohio. Some of these businesses and entrepreneurs you'll actually be hearing from for the next over the next couple days. But WealthWorks focuses on lasting wealth. We've kind of, I would say, underlined that concept, really saying that wealth means much more than money. Building lasting wealth means growing multiple capitals, a strong sense of community, good infrastructure, a well-trained workforce, unspoiled natural beauty. We have so much of that throughout Central Appalachia. And really, how do we create more inclusion? So an inclusive and open government is also really factored in to creating wealth that sticks. This is a great image of one of our local taxi services here in the Athens area, Green Cab. I think we're hearing from them tomorrow. And this is a great example how a resource has created not just an opportunity for energy efficiency services, but also creating oftentimes a need within our community for transportation for low-income folks. This is a cab actually right outside of our Holzer Medical facility. I'm sure many of you recognize that in rural communities, transportation can be a challenge. So back to, what are those three outcomes in doing economic development differently? Well, the first is really investing in and expanding the 8 capitals: social, political, cultural, built, intellectual, individual, financial, and natural assets. So practitioners strive to build the stocks of many capitals while doing harm to none. Again, another great example of one of our solar businesses. This is a solar panel installation of one of our fastest growing craft breweries, Jackie O's, on the edge of the city of Athens. Athens also, as an area, has been very blessed with innovative entrepreneurs. So we have a lot of different businesses that have started all sorts of clean energy enterprises, a lot of solar, geothermal, wind, a lot of energy efficiency programs in our region as well. So WealthWorks practitioners also consider how the assets their efforts generate are owned, back to that concept of local ownership and control. Who has the capital? Who benefits from its use? Strategic ownership and control mechanisms spread the capital widely and root it locally. So back to building resilience in our communities. Rooting wealth locally can make a huge difference. And oftentimes that's creating entrepreneurship networks that promote sectors, promote the linkages and the connections between entrepreneurs, as well as many other forms of capital. This is a great recent photograph. It's the new charger station outside of Rural Action's Sustainable Ag office in the Plains, Ohio. You can see everyone's very happy to see this new installation happen this year. I think, again, finally doing economic development differently totally requires attention to those people, places, and businesses that need it the most. So here we are in rural southeastern Ohio, and there's a tremendous push now for some of our municipalities to convert to electric vehicles. There's more interest, I think, from residents. Essentially, I've heard many conversations just in the last couple of weeks with gas prices rising, that more folks are thinking that they might need to transition from a gas-powered vehicle to an electric vehicle. Well, that's important, but what are the other pieces within that value chain? Having more charging stations throughout our communities, and not just in the sort of central city area of Athens, but out in rural communities. Another charging station was also just developed in one of our smaller cities of Nelsonville in the northern part of Athens County. So WealthWorks means improving the well-being of residents, but particularly those at the economic margins. And I think that's important, obviously, for all of our work as we proceed in any of these sectors where we use the WealthWorks framework. It's really important to understand how we can assess, design interventions, and measure the outcomes. And using the 8 capitals as that framework, as that lens, I think is the best starting off point. So we highlighted this a little bit, but looking at the different forms of capital, individual, that might include your health, your well-being, the skills of the people within your communities. It might include intellectual capital, knowledge, creativity, innovation. I always like to brag on the innovators that we have within Appalachia, Ohio, amazing intellectual capital, I think, at work. And certainly all of you participating in these workshops today and tomorrow are a testament to the investment that we're making in intellectual capital in our region. And then for many of us in rural places, natural capital is important. The land, the plants, the animals, the water, the air. So our values around our natural environments is also very essential. How do we use them in a way, employ them in a way that encourages local control and local ownership? Because again, we know that's the pathway to resilience. Built capital, pretty obvious: buildings, roads, telecommunications. I think this really resonates within the clean energy sector. Obviously, there are a lot of gaps. We have a lot of opportunity to develop more infrastructure and create more built capital. Financial, again, pretty obvious: cash and financial investments. We, again, oftentimes in our value chains, make sure that we're looking for partners within any of these capitals. So in an intellectual capital, it might be partnerships with our vocational schools, our community colleges, our universities. For financial, it might be the revolving loan funds. A great example would be Rural Action's Kiva program. So really looking at the financial assets through a lens that are going to build more community inclusion, oftentimes providing resources to entrepreneurs who are possibly underserved when it comes to accessing capital. Political, what are our connections and influence? How are individuals and organizing using advocacy as a way to maybe make changes within our political environments? And this can be working with elected officials, but it also can be working maybe on other coalitions within a sector. So political capital really has a wide spread. And then social, how's our trust in our communities? What relationships and networks exist between people and organizations? ACENET and Rural Action, a lot of our work, I always say, travels at the speed of trust. So as Dan highlighted again earlier, working within communities, being led by the people in those communities is how we build social capital. And then the last that we're going to talk about is cultural. What are our traditions? What's our sense of identity? Identity values, oftentimes very important for rural people and people everywhere. I don't want to just have my rural bias too much exposed, but I think, again, looking at some of the cultural assets, what are some of those cultural capitals that we need to strengthen? And then the big picture is, how do we package a lot of these different capitals together to really design interventions that are going to move the needle, that are going to create more opportunities for local ownership, create rural livelihoods that are sustainable. Okay, I think I've been trying to stay on time very well. So our marvelous tech, Jacob, is going to take us to our first poll. But to a large degree, what we're looking for right now is for you guys to weigh in. What do you think are the strongest capitals within our community, your community? I know people are coming from around the region. So, time to vote. Wow, social, cultural.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it's a little, I'm always pleased to see social. I definitely feel strongly myself in terms of my social networks and the support that we receive, but But what about political?
Yeah.
That's a surprising gap. Obviously, you clean energy folks maybe feel that there is a gap there.
Oh,
Okay, so it looks like, did we get everyone to participate?
I don't know.
Yeah, so again, you know, the beauty of working this way, I think, again, having people weigh in, you immediately see that visual of where are the areas that we maybe need to come together and do work on. So
I think this also, I mean, when I do something like this in a community, it's really interesting to see kind of what people's perceptions are about their assets. Because, you know, some people will say, oh, well, we have a lot of built capital, and some people will say social, and then you can actually have conversations and understand where people are coming from too. I find that really interesting, and it kind of surfaces some perceptions that might be there in the community. So interesting.
yeah, this is great. Thanks for weighing in. Melissa put these polls together. Again, just like the WealthWorks hub here in Central Appalachia, Melissa does this work. And really, you do it, Melissa, nationally, I think, as well, not just within your region. So
I have, but yeah. Lately, it's been more as a regional hub, but yes,
Yep.
I've had the great opportunity to spend some time in Appalachia and Ohio. So too.
I know we need to have you come visit again.
I would love that.
Okay, well, should we stop the poll here now? Jacob, do I need to hit anything or? I guess just hit share results.
I think I closed it, but
Okay, well, let's go to the video. So to cue this up, again, these are partners that Melissa and I have worked with over the years. WealthWorks, another WealthWorks hub, and another amazing organization that has been working through the Arkansas Delta is what we're going to focus on with regards to this Delta Bioenergy. So I'll stop sharing, I think. Is that probably the best thing to do, Jacob? Or no? You guys are bringing it
Yes,
up.
I will take the reins again here. And does everyone see the video here? Delta Bioenergy. Okay, here we go. Gonna hit play.
Don't seem to have sound on my end.
Many of our communities in the Delta just
There we go.
for decades now because they've seen things deteriorate.
DeWitt is a small rural town in southeast Arkansas. It's a friendly little town. Everybody knows most everybody. Our population is just under 3,300.
If you get in an airplane and fly over DeWitt, it's a little town with a bunch of houses and farm ground all the way around it.
If you drove off the interstate, you'd be driving a long time before you got to DeWitt. And every once in a while, you see a small cluster of a cute little downtown and businesses that are struggling to serve a population that is actually declining. But what you don't see as you're driving by these communities is this rich entrepreneurial fiber. Agriculture is the predominant economy in the Delta. Most of the products that are grown here, other than rice, are processed elsewhere. We don't have those additional forms of wealth that come through jobs that are engaged in processing or canning or distribution or anything else that could otherwise happen. We wanted to build a new economy and then plug entrepreneurs into that new economy. We want those entrepreneurs to be in the community, from the community, so that whatever profit they make circulates in that community.
They don't always have the access to the resources and to the people that they need to make things happen. And so that's part of the role that we play as coordinator, is being able to connect them to these partners that they wouldn't otherwise have a relationship with.
There had been right here in DeWitt a biofuel initiative around soybeans at a time when soybeans were affordable, and suddenly they were no longer affordable.
I've been involved in studying bioenergy cropping systems for the last 7 years. And while I was looking at different crops that could be grown, I came across a crop called camelina. About a dozen farmers are going to be planting camelina. And then in the spring, we'll harvest that camelina. It will be crushed into oil, and that oil will be refined into biodiesel here in DeWitt. The agronomic part of this project has been funded by the U.S. Department of Agriculture through a capacity building grant. And this grant has really helped us to be able to continue to do agronomic research.
One of our partners actually had identified Valero, who has a large blending facility in Memphis. We also need local demand that's going to be patient. And I'll be honest, that's why we're in DeWitt. Because when we began to explore what does local demand really mean, we came across the mayor of DeWitt. And he said, in the very first meeting we ever had with him was, look, if you do this here, I will buy every drop you produce.
When it gets to capacity, we'll be looking at fielding maybe the school district buses, which we have one of the longest routes in the state.
And so that we could grow this to a place where we could eventually supply the lab. So we had the demand piece figured out.
We could plant it in the fall and in October, and then we could harvest it in May. And the advantage of that is we're not competing against the main crops here, which are rice and soybeans, and particularly soybeans.
We're actually adding production by utilizing acres that are currently not being utilized in the winter.
If we can get another crop that they can grow in the fall, then that's more money they make. And that money gets spread around through the community, you know.
We would look primarily at minority-owned farmers, but also other small-scale farmers that need another winter, or that need a winter crop period to just be able to make a little bit more. We found a farmer who is also very engaged in conservation work, who understands how to provide technical assistance to small-scale farmers, and we hired him.
One of my jobs as an agronomist is to help farmers to understand the dynamics of growing this particular crop. And one of the other parts of my job is to reach out and find people that's interested in being involved on the cutting edge of a new initiative.
I've always been interested in trying to produce something on the farm that we could actually use and use for fuel for our own consumption.
What we decided very quickly was, because the crop is still experimental, is we needed a second input, and that was waste vegetable oil.
This building sat abandoned for about 5 years. It was the front fuel storage. So we bought it, and at the time of buying it, I was approached by a consultant to try something new. They want to start turning waste vegetable oil into biodiesel.
They just back up here with their trucks and pumps, and they pump it out of the barrels into what they got on their truck, and then they leave. And sometimes we don't even know they're even here. You're going to get rid of it, and 90% of the time you're not going to make any money off of it anyway. Give back to the town where you can.
We process 100 gallons at a time. We put it into this little springboard biodiesel refinery. Then once we start the process, it's totally automatic. You just punch the button start, and we're through with the process as far as working. The finished product looks very much like sweet tea. It has a much more oil base than diesel, and it burns hotter. So that therefore has more energy than a gallon of diesel. With all the oil coming out of the community, with all the product going back in the community, that's dollars that keep circulating in our town that we all get to use.
And now he's built, a restaurant on that site, and there's all this new activity that people are able to point to say, wow, it can really be done here.
The renewable energy is exciting, and it involves several different technologies, which would maybe inspire our young people to come back to something that they feel is important. I have 2 boys that they love the region anyway because of the hunting and the fishing, and they want to be involved in agriculture. And so this gives them another opportunity through agriculture to become involved in if they wish, but it also provides more opportunity for those who may not have a family background in farming.
But they're coming back with business experience, with technical skills, and now we're beginning to help them figure out how to start businesses. I'm real hesitant to come up with the model and say, we'll do it here. Because every community is so unique. It's that intentionality that we want to bring to every single community and not try to have a cookie cutter approach that we say, if you want to be a successful community, you need to be like the folks 50 miles down the road. It's just not going to work in the Delta.
This focus and spotlight that's on DeWitt around the value chain work is helping to create that positive image that the Delta needs. And as this replicates and the energy and the momentum spread, I think we'll see a lot more opportunities spring from this, and a pride and a positive attitude come back to the Delta.
You gotta have people that are willing to take a little bit of a chance, take the risk to be a part of something that they can see that there is a future in. We created 40 jobs in the last year or so. So there's some happening.
The way we have identified scale is 25 communities equals 25 micro refineries equals 75 new businesses with at least 100 to 150 new jobs. We're not going to stop until we get there.
Right. Let's switch back over here.
Okay, now we're going to switch back to Melissa.
Okay, yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love that video. Inez is just an amazing leader, and they've done such amazing work there and continue to. Communities Unlimited is one of the regional hubs practicing WealthWorks and spreading it around the Delta and the South. As was already said, I'm based in the Northeast, and I am the Northeast Regional Hub. But just to kind of bring us through this presentation, I know we're running low on time.
Melissa, I did check in though. We got started late, so we're going to go a little bit over. So you got
okay. Thank you. So that video is really kind of illustrates a lot of the points around value chain design. I mean, it's focused on place in terms of the Arkansas Delta, incentivizes collaboration. I mean, they had just a wide variety of amazing partners, and they had identified the value proposition for each of those partners to engage. What was in it for each of them to engage in this value chain? And that was how they helped to bring people to the table. They were creating multiple forms of wealth. I mean, the great thing about this story and a lot of stories is that, as you think about not only, what you have in terms of wealth and those different forms of wealth that we already talked about, you understand, what are those underutilized assets that can form the basis of a value chain. And, in this case, they had these, one thing was they had these fallow fields in the wintertime, and what could they do with those when they weren't using them in the main growing season? And so they grew this new crop. So that really understanding what kinds of assets you have, and then, developing them and investing in them is a real big part of value chains. And then emphasizing local ownership. Those they got local businesses engaged and entrepreneurs and the local community college to make sure that the benefits of this value chain were going to stay locally. Certainly I feel like during the pandemic, we've all seen, at least I have, in Burlington, I'm just outside of Burlington, Vermont, we have a pedestrian mall that had a variety of local and national businesses. And what I've noticed in the past 2 years is all those national businesses have left. And now it is all local. It is, I would say, 90% local businesses, which is amazing. Those businesses have stuck it out. They've been supported and invested in, and they remain. And I'm sure that folks are seeing that in other places as well. So great. And then, building on shared values, one thing, when we think about traditional supply chains, they're typically based on a commodity view of products, where a bushel of corn is the same as the next. And what people are, the thing that people are trying to get out of that supply chain is money. And value chains really introduce this idea of shared values. So, I mean, you can see some of them here: the value of a healthy environment, safe food, ability of family farms to stay alive. I think value chains, we're trying to differentiate what that product is. What's different about this product that's not a commodity? And also, the shared value is also what our partners are getting out of it, is value and different kinds of values. Whether it's, being able to move into different demands, or being able to provide a healthier product, provide jobs, good jobs for their community. There's a lot of different kinds of values. Leslie, can you move to the next slide? So just to share kind of what these value chains are all about. There's different partners. Demand partners are the buyers. So in the case of the story that we just saw, it was the community said he would buy a lot of that. They also had the Valero was one of the demand partners. Then the transactional partners are really like the folks who are actually touching that product. So they're the sourcers, the producers, the distributors, those that are adding value to that product. In this case, it's the farmers, the camelina farmers. It is the college with the micro refinery that are actually touching that product and adding value to it. And then there are support partners, and they actually provide technical support and assistance. So that might be that also might be the college in providing technical support. It could be federal or state agencies funding folks who are helping to fund and provide other kinds of technical assistance. And then the coordinator, which is that kind of red box on the top there. In this case, Communities Unlimited was the coordinator. They were holding all of those relationships together and making sure everybody was getting what they needed out of that value chain. That's a tough role, but that's the role that they were playing. And they were the ones who brought all of these folks together and had them talking to each other. I just want to share this just so you can see a real value chain map, and they all look different. So this is just one. It actually is in the North Country of New Hampshire, a value chain that I've had the pleasure of kind of getting to know them over time. Theirs is a little bit different. It's energy efficiency, but you can see in this case, they have the demand in the middle, those blue boxes, and they have, single family residential energy consumers, small business consumers, municipal consumers. They've laid out where the supply is coming from. They've also laid out the different service providers around that circle, the red folks, the contractors, the banks, they have some of their funders in there, the cap agencies. And then they have the out of region entities. These are the folks that are not in our region that are supporting this chain. So this is just one way of laying this out. I have to say, they all look different. This is just one example I thought it'd be useful to just see. And then in terms of sectors, I guess I just wanted to, we're talking about energy here, but some communities, when they're getting into the WealthWorks space, they're not sure what sector they're working on. So a lot of times when we go into communities, we try to help them think about their assets and their wealth. What do they actually have and what does that lead them towards? And we help them figure out what sectors make sense. So these are some of the ways you might think about that. Inclusivity, like, are we including a variety of different people, including those on the economic margins? Is there actual demand for this particular sector? Potential for scale? Systems change, like, can we actually make systems change through this particular sector? Obviously, we want to be understanding if we're having an impact on multiple forms of wealth. Ownership and control is always a big one. You know, can we create ownership and control opportunities locally? Production potential and competitiveness. Can we actually compete in the market? So these are just some of the criteria you might look at in terms of determining the sector. Obviously here we're talking about energy, so you guys have maybe already figured that out. And just, yeah, kind of to recap, this is kind of what it looks like on the ground when we're working with communities using WealthWorks. We inventory assets. We start with market demand. You know, is there market demand? Where is it coming from? Who is it? We choose market opportunities with the greatest wealth building potential, you know, in terms of all of those different forms of wealth. And then we actually connect those community assets to real market demand. In the case with Communities Unlimited and the Camelina, we start by serving local demand to see what we can do. And then as that is dealt with, we can actually move farther out in terms of place to find regional customers and demand partners to bring the initiative to scale. And then we map that process and the partners from input to end consumer. As you saw with the value chain, the kind of generic value chain, the one that I shared from New Hampshire, you really, once you start mapping that value chain out, you can really understand, it's a great tool to understand where your gaps are, right? Do you have all of the players that you need to actually get that product from start to finish? And if you don't, that provides a really great opportunity for entrepreneurs. I think once you see that map, it really gets people thinking about what they can do to fill those gaps in the value chain. So that is a great process. And it's a great visual for engaging partners too, because they can see where they fit in this map of what's actually what you hope will happen. And then you identify the gaps, and that is the opportunity for new entrepreneurs or even existing partners to kind of expand into those gaps. I've definitely seen that in lots of communities where folks on that map will see a gap and they'll understand that that's an opportunity, and they will actually expand to fill that gap, which is pretty amazing to see. And then just to reiterate, why use this framework? I think, we've kind of showed you some examples and showed you the video is just a great example of this, is just how this approach links together the whole system of assets, producers, and consumers in ways that really benefit everyone and build rural wealth. Hopefully you've seen how we've moved from the parts to the whole. Really emphasize investment. This is a long-term approach. It is not a one-year program. It is, a multiple year, maybe multiple decades process of building a system and building wealth in a place. It's important to understand the difference between wealth and income. You want to really build that stock of wealth. Being mindful of the inputs and outputs from that stock, which is the income and expense. And then, the collaboration is huge. I mean, this process does not work without collaboration. It is one of the real key pieces of it. So Yeah, thank you so much. I think that's, oh, we have one more poll. I totally forgot. So yeah, we just wanted to see about what kinds of assets are most important to an energy value chain in your community or region. Really focusing on, and I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. I just think I see financial is coming in strong, but I appreciate that social is coming in there too, because I think you're absolutely right. Oh, nice. Wow.
Now we have some political.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I think social is key to political, actually. And you typically have to start with social, right? Social eventually turns into political, but you have to start with the social to get there. So I appreciate that. And obviously financial is always a big one for starting any value chain. But I appreciate that, what we've found over time is that really individual, social, and intellectual are kind of where you start, right? You start with the partnerships, you start with the skills and the idea, and that will get you where you need to go. So, great. I'm going to stop that and share the results so you can see. That is very interesting. So yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really, love Appalachian, Ohio region, and I'm really excited to have gotten the opportunity to talk to all of you. And I'm happy to hang around and yeah.
Thank you, Melissa. Yeah, and any questions folks have, both for Melissa and for Leslie, welcome to drop them in the chat. After our WealthWorks Institute, we will be sharing slide decks and contact information, so you can find them very easily. Again, thank you both. I appreciate it very much to hear from you.
Yeah, thanks to Melissa for joining us.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
Right.
you.
Well, we're gonna switch now to really diving deep into the state of play in the rural energy economy today. And I've invited Dale Arnold to join us today. Dale's a longtime colleague of mine. The first time I heard from Dale was way back in the days when I worked on sustainable ag stuff. I remember going into a large room. There were hundreds of people in there, and Dale was commanding the space with some really good information about sort of how the farm economy interplays with the energy sector. He's a real keystone resource on that. So Dale is the Director of Energy, Utility, and Local Government Policy at the Ohio Farm Bureau, where he manages education, outreach, and technical assistance projects addressing energy generation, transmission, and distribution issues. Dale also works with Farm Bureau leaders to create effective energy policy on local, state, and national levels. I will pass it off to Dale, and thank you again for joining us. Appreciate it.
Quite welcome, Sarah. I hope everybody can hear me okay, and you should be seeing on your screen my first slide, different things. So I want to tell you this. Don't want anybody to drink from a fire hose, because a lot of things are happening. And this is the start of a conversation, which means this: you've got my phone number, you've got my email address. Let's continue this particular conversation, because a lot of things are happening. I want to bring a perspective about what people in the region have been talking to me about, as well as people in other areas of the state and the nation have been talking about with regard to Southeast Ohio. So this is energy future casting. These are particular issues, technologies, questions, opportunities, challenges, everything basically that Dan talked about and Melissa and Leslie talked about complement basically what we're talking about here in different things. And so I'm not necessarily saying an advocate for a particular type of technology or a particular type of project, but a lot of things are happening, and we are going to have to work with others to address, talk, collaborate, partnership, challenge, a number of particular issues going forward. So let's take a look here. And hopefully, oh, I don't know if this is working. Let me take a look here. Come on, Dale. Oh, there we go. It works. Thank goodness. Whew, the pilot light is still on my computer. Okay, let's talk about energy market trends just a little bit, because I tell you, I work with a lot of farmers, and once I do this slide, farmers really get it. As you know, in agriculture, we're very much in a commodity intensive business. Everything that we produce, many of our inputs, especially for fuel, energy, fertilizer, are all commodities. Their prices are determined with regard to supply and demand over time. Calls, puts, collars, futures contracts, trade arbitration, everything indexed from the local grain elevator to the Chicago Board of Trade and Mercantile Exchange, where those commodities are traded. That system, farmers have been using that for over a century. This first screen I show you, these are commodities too. This is natural gas, electric generation, and crude oil. And when you take a look at energies and their derivatives, they're commodities too. Calls, puts, collars, futures contracts, delivery points, everything indexed to the New York Mercantile Exchange, where these are traded on a daily basis. And that's how energy development and energy trading and markets have been operating for over a century too. Many of us have been working with and will continue to work with a number of energy service providers. Many of them are bringing what are called merchant function plants and generation facilities and projects to the community and to the region. Many of us remember from our grandparents and great-grandparents in the 20th century, the only ones who were involved in energy development were the public utilities themselves or a government commission. And yes, eminent domain provisions did apply. And we all remember those questions, concerns, and now what I call legends. This is merchant function. This has been going on for 30 years. And consequently, because this is merchant function, because it's not for national security reasons, because basically it's a business approach, eminent domain provisions do not apply, which means our ability as a community stakeholder, our ability as an effective partner, our ability basically to ask questions, concerns, negotiate, be at the table, work with a number of leaders, local, state, and national, are much better than we think. And consequently, it's been my job to help people get involved in those particular processes. Things have changed since the beginning of the 21st century. I also show people this. Someone asked me a while back, they said, can you give me an apples to apples comparison on how agriculture uses energy? This chart I used and got information from the Energy Information Agency, US Department of Energy, a number of years ago. And this is a graphic depiction in MMBTUs, not price, but in MMBTUs, or a caloric value of use, on how agriculture uses energy. And you'll see there that green is distillate or motor fuel, blue is natural gas. And you're saying, well, gosh, Dale, since the 1970s, our need and our use for those particular fuels is going down. And it has. But I also need to remind you of this. In the 1970s, when I bought my first car, which was a 1967 Ford Fairlane with the largest motor Ford could put in under a hood, I probably got a whopping 14 miles to the gallon. I now drive a Ford Escape. I get 42 miles to the gallon. And farmers have done that. When you take a look at our trucks, our cars, our utility vehicles, our tractors, our combines, they become much more fuel efficient, and that's helped in a number of particular things. But I also need to tell you this, back in the 1970s, when I was baling hay for my grandparents, and it was 98 degrees and 98% humidity when we were doing it, the power plant on the elevator to take the hay bales up to the hay mow was a 5 horsepower gasoline powered Briggs & Stratton engine. And God help you in those weather conditions when it got vapor lock. It was not a good day. What did my grandfather switch it out with? Electric motors. And many of the farms basically around here use electric motors, 147 to 150 of different horsepower varieties, and that in many cases has become one of our major fuel of choices. And you'll see from the red bars there, the electricity use and utilization of that for a number of applications has grown considerably. When you take a look at software development, computers and that, it doesn't take long to see where we're heading. If I did this same thing for homes, urban, suburban, and rural, small businesses on Main Street, as well as industries throughout Ohio and southeastern Ohio, you would see basically the same type of pattern. This is where we're going, what we're seeing. I also show people this. This is actually a picture of what you would call local electricity. Local electricity isn't just a county or southeastern Ohio or a region of the state. Ohio belongs to what is called the PJM interconnection network with electricity. PJM stands for Pennsylvania, Jersey, Maryland Interconnection Network. That's a collection of transmission circuits and power generation facilities, privately owned as well as publicly owned. It is a 14-state network from the Carolinas to Chicago. And again, when you talk about electricity as a commodity or energy as a commodity especially, it's interesting that you can do a delivery point, deliver electric generation into one circuit in one part of the system, say in Ohio, and an off-taker through trade arbitrage and balancing can claim that in another part. We actually have energy service providers in the southern part of the state who are generating and delivering into a delivery point here in Ohio. And folks in Baltimore, Maryland are taking credit basically for the generation asset and balancing it there. There are a number of circuits in PJM, and the further east you go into the system to the eastern seaboard, the vast majority of those transmission circuits are fully subscribed, which means there's very little, if any, room or capacity to put additional power generation into the system. The further west you go, including Ohio, there are a number of circuits in southeastern Ohio, north central, central Ohio, and western Ohio especially, that have additional capacity, additional room to put power generation. Now you see why we're seeing so much development with regard to wind, solar, natural gas-fired turbine generation, other projects. And I tell you, when you take a look at the circuits in eastern Ohio in the PJM system, there are already a number of service providers who are taking a look at accommodating power generation in some way, shape, or form in those circuits. Will we be working with other energy service providers? The answer is yes. And what you learn working with one is going to help quite a bit when you start working with another one in a very short period of time. This is also from the Energy Information Agency. This is a graphic depiction of what's happening on one of the technologies, coal, and I see some people nodding their heads. This is a graphic depiction of coal-fired generation retirements just between 2012 and 2016. The picture I have there was just taken here a few weeks ago in Conesville in Coshocton County when the 800-foot stacks basically were brought down. That was something to see. And we're seeing this all across the region. I just talked to a person with a national news network. They were in Cincinnati interviewing people. They were going back to Pittsburgh to their main office and wanted to talk to me 3 days later. And I said, how are you getting back home? Are you going to go 75 to 70 across Columbus? Or I suggest you take State Route 7 between Portsmouth and Pittsburgh and count the smokestacks. When they got a hold of me 3 days later, the reporter said, oh my God, I never realized what was happening there and different things. This is much different than what people think. And you're seeing that right now where we're transitioning out of some and going into other types of power generation development. Do we need to be part of those particular conversations? Yes, we do, because it impacts our communities, and working with others collaboratively to take a look at solutions, strategies, challenges, opportunities is absolutely huge. let's take a look at some of the technologies people basically are talking about bringing to Southern Ohio in some way, shape, or form. I'm not necessarily an advocate for any or all of these, but I need to let you know that these discussions have been developing for quite some time, many years. You're seeing here nuclear. Is it a viable option for Ohio? You have a number of energy service providers who are taking a look at that. You're hearing a lot about small modular reactor systems. This is much different than nuclear technology that we've seen in the 20th century. There are a number of designs. There are a number of focuses with regard to that. Portability is one of the things they're looking at. And we actually have cooperatives in the northern panhandle of Idaho, where 3 of these are in operation. We have others basically in Wisconsin taking a look at bringing this technology in and seeing the viability. And they closed their last nuclear fired facility over 35 years ago. Do we need to be involved in those conversations going forward for Southeast Ohio? The answer basically is yes. This is one of the technologies some folks are taking a look at coming to our community in some way, shape, or form. Here's another one. You've all heard of oil and gas. And yes, when you take a look at shale oil and gas development, Ohio is only one of 3 places in the entire United States. When you take a look at market conditions, anywhere from $60 per barrel of oil up to $130 per barrel of oil, regardless of the market conditions being blue blazing or depressed, it's an area where you are still seeing oil and gas production because of the technology, because of the supply, because basically the access to the market, a number of things going there. As a matter of fact, it's interesting if parts of Ohio where we're living, West Virginia and Western Pennsylvania could become a nation unto itself, we could join OPEC. The amount of natural gas and different things being used for that, the amount of oil, which is different than West Texas intermediate crude and is good for plastics, polymers, pigments, pharmaceuticals, and different things, is something that's being taken a look at. Will we have to continue with regard to the oil and gas discussion? The answer very much is yes. What are the impacts on the communities? Collaboration, working with a number of things. What are you taking a look at 2nd and 3rd generation products and services, midstream, downstream, those particular things? We will still be involved in those discussions going forward. You also need to take a look at this. This is actually Guernsey Power Station near Cambridge. Natural gas-fired turbine generation stations, because of our supply, especially in natural gas in the Marcellus and Utica Shale. There are 42 different permits for natural gas turbine fire technology in the Appalachian Plateau alone, and in other parts of Ohio and in the PJM system. A number of communities are taking a look at this. A number of communities are working with service providers. They're talking around the table about potential benefits, economic, environmental, social, jobs, those particular things. How can, because remember, eminent domain provisions do not apply, and many of the attributes and many of the resources that we're talking about, individual, industrial, natural, built, finance, political, social, cultural, all need to be discussed, all need to be examined around the table. Partnerships, those particular types of things need to be addressed. And this is one of the technologies that are being taken a look at. There are 4 or 5 of these plants, and they're going from peaking capacity to full-blown baseload generation assets in many parts of the state and the nation and in PJM. Ethane, when you're talking about the 2nd generation with regard to some of the assets in oil and gas developments, we've all seen the ethane separation facilities around Scio and different parts basically of the region. We've all heard about the cracker plant just across the river in the West Virginia Northern Panhandle in Pennsylvania. We've all seen the PTTGA site down near Shadyside, which used to be the Burger Generation Facility for coal just a few short years ago. A number of discussions are going forward with local government leaders, state and federal leaders, community stakeholders, government officials. Do we need to be part of those discussions on those types of technologies? The answer is yes. Many people are exploring and taking a look at those ones too. Wind and solar. You're seeing a number of things there. And I tell you, this is a map from the Ohio Power Siting Board. There are over 40 utility scale generation facilities under consideration in some aspect of permit with the Ohio Power Siting Board. There are 14 wind projects under operation or consideration also. Yes, a lot of this is happening in PJM circuits in the west and north central part of the state. However, when you take a look at the permit process with PJM, rights for interconnection, the number of energy service providers who want to bring solar into southeastern Ohio are already having and have been working on federal permits for 3 to 5 years for their ability to identify a very specific transmission circuit in PJM for interconnection. And we'll be talking shortly with a number of folks about developing a project or a plant someplace in this state. You're taking a look at an experimental one basically in the water. We're talking about one in Lake Erie near Cleveland. You have a number of wind assets already in generation in north central as well as western Ohio. And this is a picture also of Hillcrest Solar. This was taken a few years ago, right after they started operation. It gives you some idea of the size, the scope of what some projects people are taking a look at here. We have a lot of skill, knowledge, and experience with on-site solar at the kilowatt level. This is the megawatt level. This is 50 megawatts or above. I was just in Jackson, Ohio last night at a community meeting where this type of technology was being explored. And there are 2 projects in Jackson County, just a few hours drive down the road from where we're sitting now. This is also happening. Hydrogen. We're talking about methane. We're talking about a supply. We're talking about what's going to be happening 35 to 40 years down the line, which is the immediate now time frame for many energy service providers. You have blue methane, which can use basically natural gas or a fossil fuel to create hydrogen. Pink hydrogen, which is nuclear fire capacity used in electrolysis to do that, or green hydrogen, which basically can use solar or wind. One of the reasons I think you are seeing a lot of development in the southern parts of the state is that we have a huge system of interstate transmission lines and storage facilities for methane or for natural gas, which can be readily adapted with regard to that. If you take a look at a number of permits with the Power Siting Board on power generation using natural gas fired turbines, all of them basically say is that we are able to transition over to hydrogen or a mix very shortly and can do it now. And many are planning once hydrogen is available in the supply requirements that they need, they want to switch to that. As a matter of fact, this is a picture of the facility at Long Ridge Energy along the Ohio River in, I believe, Monroe County. It's at 400 plus megawatts of capacity, and it's under operation right now. One of the first places that is using hydrogen solely as a power generation fuel, and will probably be a leader taking a look in having other technologies do the same thing. Will that be taken a look at in other parts of the state? Well, we need to be involved in discussions with regard to that. You bet, because that also is coming. Mining. We're hearing a lot about coal, and although coal-fired generation capacity is some of it, a lot of it's being retired, it'll still be with us well into the second half of the century to be part of this diversified energy portfolio mix. But I also need to tell you this, we're talking about energy storage, battery backup systems. Those are all part basically of solar energy development. You have what is called Flint Storage, which is a huge facility near New Albany that is there basically near Intel and a number of those industries that is actually a power or generation storage facility, the first in its state being permitted by the Power Siting Board. I've talked with a number of companies over the last 12 to 15 years who've told me this. They said, you know, Mr. Arnold, we're doing research here, and our research shows us that some of the largest deposits in the eastern United States, where many of the rare earths that we need to create energy storage systems and batteries, are along coal seams, directly above and directly below. We know where all the slag piles are from old retired mines in this state. We want to find them and we want to mine them and extract those particular minerals. What do you think about that? I tell them about Sunday and Monday Creek. I show them pictures basically of different things with regard to mining in Eastern Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia. I show them the challenges, the issues, the concerns that need to be addressed in the 21st century that were never addressed in the 20th century. Do we need to talk about this seriously? Do we need to take a look with regard to this if they want to revisit mining, large mining in Eastern Ohio? The answer very much is yes, and communities need to be involved in that process. We're also seeing a number of things happening. Pipeline infrastructure, transmission lines, energy storage facilities, local distribution infrastructure, all being upgraded. Ohio is part of a national interest transmission corridor, and I'm involved right now in close to 30 different cases before the state and federal government, with community leaders, with farmers, where those transmission lines that were installed anywhere from the 1930s to the 1970s are all being upgraded, being enlarged, being rerouted across farm ground. And a lot of folks have questions, issues, concerns with regard to that. How do you strike the balance to ensure that energy can be transported from point A to B for a number of folks, communities, and regions, but also the ability basically for individual farmers, smaller communities, and others to be part of that particular process. We also need to help farmers with this. Many of our utilities are becoming what are called platform companies. Energy is a commodity. I can buy my electricity through a customer choice program. I can buy it from a CREST or certified retail electric service provider. Many of our utilities, investor-owned, cooperative, and municipal, are becoming platform companies. They're going to give you a choice where you want to buy that commodity, and they'll use the local distribution system that they will still own, operate, and dedicated to give service to deliver it into the system for your use. However, they're also saying this. You know, that analog meter on the side of your house, it's now a digital two-way communication device. You're going to be able to buy electricity over time allotment like an industry. You're going to be able to buy a number of appliances with VG chips that will be tied into a local network system in a laptop on your kitchen counter and talk to each other about sharing the electric load and managing the electric load for your home, your farm, your business today. You're going to be taking a look at a number of services. Here's some for agriculture: lighting, energy load management, variable speed motors. It's interesting. I've been on AEP's collaborative advisory board for a number of years. They've launched this particular system in the Columbus market a few years ago. They started telling customers about it, and you know what customers said? We hate it. I don't want it. I don't want to understand it. It's interesting that the average age of an electric customer in AEP is 57 years old. I'm 62, and I can feel for them because I'm going to tell you this. When it comes to the cable box on my cable TV at home, I can't program it yet. I get my 8-year-old grandson to do it. I say, Augie, here's a Snickers bar. Can you program Poppy's TV? And the answer is always yes. Our younger kids, my sons and daughters, all understand the system in different things for me. I'm still uncomfortable with regard to this, but helping people basically take a look at managing their own generation cost, helping people become comfortable with these different technologies, helping them invest in a number of platform services that the utility and other independent energy service providers have is going to be huge. Another reason we need to be at the table discussing, another reason we need to be advocating our need, another reason why we need to do education and outreach. This is on the farm too. It's interesting, in the beginning of the 20th century, the mantra was 40 acres and a mule. Jordan Haywisher, who's with me here at Ohio Farm Bureau, basically coined the phrase for the 21st century, it's 1,000 acres and a robot. The number of technologies coming to farm and agriculture. I made national news when I did a program for Green Energy Ohio, which I'm a member of at OARDC in Worcester, about EV applications on the farm, and said these would work, these would not, given the logistics, the travel time, all those things. And so we still have farmers who are looking at EV vehicles. And you'll be hearing from my friends from Clean Fuels Ohio, which I'm also a member of, as one of the workshops where we'll discuss this. You're also taking a look at a number of different technologies and different things where farmers are adapting these technologies efficiently to use there. Will we be seeing some farmers in southeastern Ohio applying these? You bet. And we need to be involved in the process, the education, the outreach, finding service providers who can do care, maintenance, and upkeep, business opportunities to do this as a custom work. A number of things are happening. And I'm almost done here. Reclamation. Understanding our history is absolutely, positively huge. I have a picture I'm looking at on the left side. I think it might be on the right side of you. It looks like there's a number of oil derricks on a lake. A lot of people, and I need to tell them this, the first offshore oil rig was not in the Gulf of Mexico. It was in Grand Lake St. Mary's near Salina, Ohio, and it got to be prolific over there. There were over 100 of them on the lake at the time. Bowling Green, Ohio, Wood County, you don't see an oil or gas well today. There were 6,000 of them at the turn of the last century. Orphan wells, we've all seen those particular things. We are all inherited a number of challenges for repair, remediation, reclamation in oil and gas. The same with strip mining, the same with coal, both shaft mining and strip. The needs basically for repair, remediations, billions of dollars in investment with regard to the energy infrastructure and things we had in the 20th century, we still want and need to work with, need to tell people our story, need to share information, need to make investments in those, and those discussions also need to go forward too. Other things, let's talk about second generation, plastics, polymers. If you take a look also there, I have a picture of the reclaimed earth colors from the Sunday and Monday Creek reclamation they've done with regard to iron there. A number of things are being taken a look at, not only with regard to raw material and energy production. Let's talk about what can we do, what kind of knowledge, skill, expertise, what kind of training, what kind of assets we need to have to take a look at different types of industries, small, medium, large, to come basically to our particular communities. Do we need to be involved in those discussions? Yes, we do. Years ago, during the first oil boom in the 20th century between Pittsburgh and Marietta, you had a lot of work there with regard to plastics, polymers, chemical industry. Does that want to come back? There are folks who are talking about resurrecting that along the river. There are some advantages, benefits, challenges with regard to those particular technologies. Do we need to be involved in those particular processes? The answer is yes. We've already talked about reclamation and mining. We've talked about rare earths, plastics, polymers, pigments, pharmaceuticals, the raw materials here. Can we also have different types of industries take that to a second or a third generation product or service, small, medium, and large? Those discussions need to go forward. You're also seeing here, you talk about Intel in where I'm at right now, and I live 10 minutes away from New Albany, Ohio. The things with regard to computer chips, battery storage systems. You have the Mahoning Valley, which is now trying to resurrect itself instead of being automotive, using liquid fuels, being the EV Valley going forward, machining parts with regard to that. Those discussions also are going forward. We've referenced some of those in the presentations we did a little earlier this morning. We also need to take a look at a number of things for our communities. Transportation is going to be huge. How do you get in and out of Southeast Ohio with products, goods, and services? High-speed internet, pipeline systems, river traffic, transmission line capacity. Infrastructure needs to be upgraded in different things. We did that in the 20th century, and we've learned from that. Do we need to follow that same pattern? I don't think so. We need to be at the table advocating our position. And what are the unique needs of our communities going forward? As these things basically progress, how can these assets for transportation not only be used for goods and services, but also be used for the goods and services of community members very long term? What kind of assets that we need to have basically for our communities and different things? A 2-lane highway is no longer going to cut it. Rail traffic, information, high-speed internet for everyone so they can do basically jobs and different things from home, and those things are all very important. And we need to talk about these assets coming along with the other assets other folks want to bring in. We also need to talk about these investments too. There are times here we're going to have the capital, the knowledge, skill, the expertise, the interest, and some of the assets. We need to take a look at these also. Besides high-speed internet and different things, what do we need to do with regard to our school system? How can these energy development opportunities help with regard to that? Let's talk about community services. Let's talk about health services. Let's talk about fire, EMS, local security. Let's talk about also too, a number of things with regard to the arts as well as sciences. The number of food deserts we have in southeastern Ohio are absolutely positively huge. How can we use some of the capital coming in from some of these energy development projects to invest in those types of opportunities and things? Parks, recreational services, tourism. If you are, and we need to tell energy service providers, if you are coming into Ohio and you want to be our neighbor and you want to be here and invest in a long time, what assets, what infrastructure, what resources can you bring to bear to help with this type of infrastructure too? Those discussions need to be done. And believe it or not, when you're talking about energy development and eminent domain provisions do not apply, both state and federal law, one of the 7 principles, it's called convenience, public need, and necessity. Energy service providers that get permits to do a number of things are going to have to show and make commitments to local communities where they're involved on investment long-term. Those start with discussions at the table. I'm going to tell you this, if you're not at the table, you will be part of the menu. Things to think about, things to take a look at. Knowing the regulatory approval process is going to be huge. Many times this is a judicial process. It's not a public popularity contest done by election. Understanding many things are a matter of public record, under judicial scrutiny, your ability to basically be a party of record in case proceedings before the Power Siting Board, absolutely positively huge. And we're showing local governments and community stakeholders how to be involved in those processes. I'm going to skip through a couple of these because I want to keep us all on time. But when talk about planning and involvement, we need to take a look at creation and development of projects that address environmental concerns, aesthetic needs, and provide economic benefits going forward as a mission statement. That's me. I hope you didn't have to drink from a fire hose. I know I've thrown a lot of stuff at you, but let's continue the conversation, and I look forward with working with all of you again soon. Sarah, back to you.
Boy, Dale, thank you. I knew that would be just chock full of not only great information, but also a little bit of humor too. I definitely agree. If you are not at the table, you're on the menu. That is very true here in Ohio. Thank you for bridging that historic legacy side of the conversation with what decisions we're making today. I think that really does help us think about what will the impacts be 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, when we invest in ethane cracker.
Yeah.
When we invest
Sarah, one thing I want to say is this: the immediate now time frame for an energy service provider is always a 30-year time block. They are thinking that far ahead and are in that type of schedule, number one. And number two, what's really amazing for a number of folks, when I tell them eminent domain provisions do not apply, they are absolutely amazed. Many of us, and sometimes the collective culture is used against us. We remember grandpa and great grandpa talking about when the transmission line came across a farm and they gave me a couple $100 and said, get out of the way. They remember those types of processes, and things have changed considerably since the beginning of this century, and our need and the ability to create collaborative relationships to have a say with regard to processes. With the Ohio Power Siting Board, there's no cookie cutter approach. Yes, we have a uniform system of rules and regulations on energy development that apply in all 88 counties. But each case is an individual judicial proceeding where evidence applies. Parties of record are allowed to be involved in those processes. You have to show evidence of convenience, public need, and necessity, and the importance for individual community stakeholders, groups, local government to be involved in the process is absolutely huge. And I spend a lot of time doing that and look forward to working with you guys in the future. Any questions?
Yeah, Dale, I was going to say, can we take a question or two and then we're just go into break? So I see in the chat, Jay Wormke brings up a pretty key point about how we hope the utilities in the not too distant future can envision a time when energy is a service rather than a commodity. Jay, do you want to hop on screen and hop on camera and, you know?
Yeah, Jay, I haven't seen you in a while. Get in there.
Yeah, come on, come hang out with us. Out there, see his camera, but.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing the screen, but I'm sure, folks, if you want a copy of this, I did a handout thing and send it to Sarah and she can send that to you. Or you can get a hold of me. I'm going to stop share so I can see everybody. There we go.
Yeah, that sounds good.
There we go. But Jay brings a very valid point. And I tell you, sometimes we need to be involved in the process at the Power Siting Board and with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission with their new Office of Community Engagement. Some companies understand this extremely well and are shaping themselves towards that. Others are entrenched in what their strategy was in the early 20th century. And I think if we take a look at the press and media, we can tell the difference between the two. We still need to discuss a number of things. We need to advocate our position. We need to be at the table saying this is what we want basically out of an energy service provider. Here's some things we want you to take a look at. Here's some infrastructure requirements that we have. Here's the infrastructure requirements that we talked about with our two previous presenters that we can bring to the table. What do we need to make this so? Is it going to be done automatically? No, but I'll tell you this. There was a number of folks I worked with 30 years ago who said to me, that's never going to happen. that literally are in charge of the divisions that it is happening. So we need to continue that advocacy.
Any other questions? You can raise your hand or write in the chat.
Oh, REAP, I saw Carrie did. Yeah. If you take a look with regard to REAP, Rural Energy for America project, yes, there is another round going through here. As a matter of fact, they're almost done. Randy Monhemius with USDA Rural Development here in Columbus is the main coordinator with regard to those. I tell a lot of folks this, those grants are highly competitive. You are literally going to have to do an incredible amount of research. It's almost like getting a bank loan. And also you're going to be able to need to show that you are still going to invest in and do this project regardless if you get the grant resources or not. We've had some do those. However, those are for some very large projects in the hundreds of thousands of dollars range. There are still a number of grant programs and tax benefits and different things for folks who want to do things for on-site, on-farm things and small. And I can get more information with regard to that.
Yeah, I'm also resourced when it comes to USDA REAP technical assistance and grant writing support. If anyone would like to talk further about the REAP process, I'm happy to help with that.
Yeah, Carrie, I agree too. Randy is wonderful to work with. I've had over 20 years of working with folks. And yeah, there are two grades of grants. There's one that's the big and one that's the small.
Quite a difference between writing a tier 3 grant and a smaller grant. It's a lot.
Jay had a question too about if a farmer is approached about a long-term lease agreement for solar on their farm. I need to say this, Jay, how much did I say I was going to pay you to say that? No, I'm going to say is that welcome to my world. I do a lot of kitchen table meetings with individual families and groups of farmers all across the state on questions, issues, concerns, needs, requirements you need to explore as you do that. We have members, you know, Farm Bureau, it's interesting when we talk about our leadership position. We have members who are interested in creating those partnerships, and we have other members who want to continue to farm and have serious concerns about some of the impacts, and rightfully so. I help both. I make sure both are at the table advocating their position. I make sure basically their issues are addressed, and I help both sides of the issue, believe it or not. And so for more information about that, anyone can give me a call.
Let's all take a moment and thank Dale. Appreciate your time enormously, and your perspective is very, very valuable. So thank you.
Right, welcome. You guys take it easy. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, we're going to take a quick short break. Try to get back here. I guess we've got a 5-minute break, 5 to 7 minute break, and then we're going to join up again, and we're going to each sort of self-select. There'll be 3 different tracks that you can jump into. Tristan Rader is going to be leading our solar track. We've got Justin Kale here, who's going to lead our energy efficiency track. And then we've got Brandon Jones from Clean Fields, Ohio, who will be leading the clean transportation track. So think about that as you're taking a quick bio break. And we'll see you back here at 11 o'clock to divide up and chat. Thanks, everyone.